Now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to the second hour of Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. In this hour, we're going to be speaking to MJ Ryan about her new book, How to Survive Change That You Didn't Ask For. But don't forget, Just Energy Radio is brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com, where you can transform your life by becoming a medical intuitive counselor, or energy medicine practitioner. Go to the website and download their 50-page Jumpstart Your Intuition Guide. It's free. We like free. Also brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer. So if there's stuff going on in your life, give me a call, send me an email, and we can set up a time for a private consultation. It's that easy. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about MJ and get her on the air. Best-selling author MJ Ryan is one of the creators of the Random Acts of Kindness series and the author of How to Survive Change You Didn't Ask For. This year I will. How to, okay, I think I got like a little ghosty in my computer. This year I will. How to finally change a habit, keep a resolution, or make a dream come true. Attitudes for Grace, 365 happiness boosters, and many other books. She works as a coach to individuals and teams around the world. Her website is www.mj-ryan.com. And just to let the listeners know, I have the web page up that has her bio on it, and it keeps flipping to a different page. And so I keep flipping back, and I'm like, okay, I hope it's just a computer issue and not a little ghosty issue. Here, we're going to turn the page now. Anyway, hi, MJ. Welcome to Just Energy Radio.
Hi, Dr. Rita. I'm happy to be with you.
So just, you on the break, you were hearing a little bit, but I just moved into I don't want to say a new house to me. How's that? That was built in 1910, and I already know there's one ghost here. And then we almost had the ghost of the kitty present in the wall. And so, I've just been observing, things to see if it's like things or other things, if you know what I mean. Anyway, on to you. So how did you... It's just changed screens again. How did you become interested?
Just leave that alone. Just go away on that.
I'm not going to touch it anymore. How did you become interested in topics surrounding self-growth and healing?
I accidentally fell into it. Well, I actually used to own a book publishing company, and I've always been interested in these topics, actually. But the reality is, so I was publishing books in it, but really it was because I wanted to learn how to be happier in my own life. I knew why I was miserable, but I didn't know how to be happy. And I started to study happy people. I started to experiment with stuff on my own. And then I helped write a book called Random Acts of Kindness. And I didn't want to be a hypocrite, so I started to do these kind things to strangers. And then I felt happier, and it's like, wow, I've hit on to something. And then I started looking at what are the other small things we can do to get happier, like be more grateful and be more generous. And so that kind of launched me on the path. And I actually got so interested in all of this that I sold my company and I started to work with people, individuals and teams. And then I got really interested in how do people create positive changes in their life in general. And then I thought, well, okay, that's good, but how do we survive the things we didn't ask for? So here I am. That's the whole story.
Well, okay, and I bet you're sticking to it. Okay, so today, obviously, we're going to be talking about change, but why is change so hard for some people?
Well, I think that for some people who are some people are exhilarated by change. They love change. They embrace it. They go towards it. They do it willingly. They actually change it up for fun. But that has to do with the way that you think. we have different kinds of talents of thinking, and for some of us, that innovative kind of thinking is really exciting and exhilarating. But for many, many, many of us, we like it the same. And when it, because life is ever changing and things keep, evolving around us, and things that used to be there aren't there anymore, and new things happen. And for the rest of us, that can be really, really scary, and it can be really upsetting. And, fundamentally, if something's happened that you haven't asked for, because when people embrace change, then they're kind of asking for it. They're like, yay, bring it on. But when you aren't, then it's really thrust you into the grieving process, I believe, because it's a loss of something. Even if that loss is an idea of how things were going to be. But whatever it is, if we haven't asked for it, then it's always a loss, and therefore we're in grief. And that sets up all those feelings of denial and anger and bargaining, and then hopefully eventually acceptance.
I mean, I guess I'm a person who embraces change, sorta. Okay, there are some things that I can be pretty stuck about. But is it a very common thing that if there is something that is put upon us, that most people have a hard time, or it's a more challenging piece of change for us to work through?
Yes, because if nothing else, it's a death of an illusion that we're all in control of our lives. There's some parts of it that we're not. And, it's like these big changes in the economy and big changes in the environment. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going on that's beyond our individualness, right? And so that brings up that sense of, like, I'm not completely, totally, and absolutely in control. There's lots of stuff we are in control of. There's probably more that we're in control of than most of us know. But still, it triggers that, oh my goodness, I don't want this, and it's happening to me anyway.
And I kind of get the impression that when something like that happens, you have to, there's the situation that might transform. You might get laid off from your job, or somebody might die, or there's a myriad of different things that can happen to somebody. But then there is like this whole decision-making process that comes along with it, and a whole new set. I mean, it's, it's not just, well, I lost my job and that's it. It becomes this much bigger issue than just one thing.
Absolutely. And it triggers both our the emotional aspects of our brain, which is like about fear, and then so we have to learn how to deal with that. And it also triggers our into the quote unquote thinking brain. So that's what you were talking about decision making. And I also think, because this is a show about energy, I want to talk about that as well. I think it also it has us challenged on an energetic level that we need to begin to respond energetically as well. So we can get into that in a little bit, but what you're talking about is the thinking brain that says, okay, so if this has happened, like, what are all the implications, and how do I deal with all of that, and how do I sort through it all, especially when our emotional brain is going, danger, danger, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared.
And I think that, I think for most people, at least my observation is, it throws them into some kind of survival, weird place.
Yes, because the part of what we have these parts of our brains that we've got from our reptilian past, from our mammalian past, from our primate past, and they all play a part in this. So the most primitive, the amygdala, is about the threat system, and it's the smart as a lizard. It just says, is this potentially dangerous? Yes. And if it says yes, it goes into fight, flight, or freeze, right? So we're either angry. I'm thinking about nurses that I'm working with right now in a hospital system that is really changing how they do everything. They're taking away a lot of the time they used to have with patients in order to do much more paperwork. It's become very corporate, and they're really, really angry. So they're in the fight part of the fight or flight. They don't want it to be like this, and they're resisting with their anger. Other people get into flee. They go, I'm just going to quit. I'm just going to quit. I'm just going to leave. And other of us get into freeze, which is we just feel frozen and our brain goes somewhere we don't even know and we're stuck. So those responses are physiological ones that happen when that part of our brain, the amygdala, says, this is potentially dangerous to the way we want it to be. And those reactions are very, very strong. And we have to learn how to relate to those things and deal with them because they are happening first. So we have to deal with those first. And before we can even get to, okay, well, this is really happening, so how do we deal with it?
In those three things that you said, flight, fright, or freeze.
Fight, flight, like run away. I run away. So I have a client right now, and he's always saying, I just want to quit. I just want to go away. It's like, okay, maybe you do want to quit, but this is not the right frame of mind to make that choice. Because when you're in that place, whether you're trying to fight or you're trying to run away or you're just totally frozen, this thinking part of your brain has actually been, it's called a hijack. And what happens is that primitive part says, this is so dangerous, I can't let you think about it. So it's really, really good. So let's say you have a kid and you're out in the street and your kid darts out in front of a car. You don't want the thinking part of your brain to go, do you think I should go and save my child? It's like, no, that instinct to just dart out there, grab him and, rescue him is what saves us in the physical emergencies. But the problem is human beings have the same mechanism going on for what it considers to be social, like in between people, or emotional or financial emergencies. It doesn't differentiate between a car is about to kill me and I don't like that they've changed the computer system.
It can't. No, just kidding.
That part can't tell the difference.
In people,
and so we have to
in people, do they have a tendency? I mean, obviously, if your child runs into the street, I'm just going to make the assumption that everybody's innate response would be, well, maybe not everybody's would be to, go into flight and go grab that child. Although I could see where some people, their innate response might be that they freeze. I could see that.
Yeah.
But do people tend to have a certain pattern that they will run? Because, I'm just kind of going, okay, so how can people start to look at what's going on in their life? And if we're all over the place all the time, then it's more challenging to see, well, am I a fighter or am I a flighter? Or am I a freezer?
A freezer, yes. And for some of us, it's the same over and over. And some of us, it depends on the situation, like at work versus at home, maybe. But the point is this. There's been decades and decades of research about what to do. So I can tell you. So what works is recognize that your brain has been hijacked by this primitive part and label it. Oh, hijack. And I'm not in my right mind and I need to calm down. So labeling, what it does is it brings on that part that's been hijacked by the emotional part, the thinking part, to come back online and stronger to try to help us deal with the actual situation rather than our imagination of the threat. So the labeling, oh, I've been hijacked, and then reframing, which is to say, how can I look at this? Is this really a threat? Am I really in physical danger? And when you ask that question, 99% of the time the answer is no. Okay, it's not real like a life or death emergency. It's just that part of my brain is trying to alert me and it doesn't know any other way. Okay, so it's not actually a physical emergency. So then the more that you can think rationally, the more you put that little lizard to sleep.
I didn't see whiner in your list. There was fight, flight, frozen. I didn't see whine.
Whine is kind of in the fight part. It's like pathetic. It's pathetic fighting.
Oh, ooh. But that's just a really great idea. I mean, I know that when we go into fear, and if you just recognize I'm scared, and if you can just own that emotional space, you can kind of disassociate almost from the physical emotion part of
Yes,
it
that's right.
and look at it. So are we talking about kind of the same process of kind of disassociating from
Yeah.
the physical emotional part?
Yes, I think the word to me it's about recognizing that it's happening, and the more that you bring on the thinking part, then it calms it down. It's the research says it diminishes. It doesn't say it takes it away totally, but the other piece you can do, because we're talking about our bodies and our minds and our energy fields, the other thing you can do is fool your brain that it isn't an emergency, and that's the breathing. 3 slow, deep breaths, relaxing all your muscles on every exhale. The more that you physiologically relax, because the stress response is a tightening and acceleration of everything. And as soon as you start to relax all your muscles and breathe slower, that the lizard goes, wait a minute, I guess it's not actually an emergency because she's calming down. And it calms down a little bit too. So that's another way that we can work with our own body minds to turn down that reaction, because that's the worst state of mind to do anything except save ourselves in a physical emergency.
So let me ask you this. So let's say, for example, you know, have a family with 3 small children and you are the primary income generator and you get laid off. And,
Yep.
you know, obviously you're that whole fight, you know, or flight or whatever, you know, one of them is going to turn on and you start
Very strong.
really running
That's right.
around and pounding pavement and doing what you can to, you know, take care of your responsibility.
Well,
Is it
first you've got to calm that part, because
okay?
that's interfering with your ability to do what you just said, pound the payment and figure out what to do. So first you calm down that part and you go, okay, now once you're back in the rational mind, you go, okay, what are all the different things I need to do to make this happen? What are all my options? So you go into expanding your thinking about, so first you deal with the feeling, calm down, calm down, calm down, so I can now think, now how can I deal with this? What are all my resources? Who can I go to help? I mean, one of the things I always say is that when change that you didn't ask for hits you, it's not do you need support, but what kind of support do you need? Do you need help paying the rent? So you need to like move in with somebody else with your kids? Do you need, help finding a job? Where can you find that? It's like help you in these situations, we all need support. And so when we go towards support, then we activate the part of our brain that actually is our primate brain, which is to get together with other people. And that helps us calm down as well. And then we think about all of our different options. I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. And then that helps us get into the problem solving. What are all the different ways I can deal with this? Really
Mm-hmm.
mode. Yeah?
And not be
But
shooting from the hip and doing something really stupid because you're desperate.
exactly. And the other thing, so once you go into the expanding, so let's decide, let's imagine that there you are, and you live in a house and you've got rooms, and so you go, oh, I could have roommates, right? I could bring in people who would give me money, and that'll help me, pay the mortgage and survive as well as my unemployment. And while I'm looking, let's pretend that that's one of the things you decide to do. So here's where the energy stuff comes in. My teachers have taught me that there are 3 ways to use our energy. One is dynamically, which is the energy of action. I'm going to go out and I'm going to post on Craigslist or wherever, Facebook, that I'm looking for people. That's an action, right? The second is receptive, which is we open ourselves up energetically to what is available to us to be received. And the third is magnetic, which is what the law of attraction is all about, which is the drawing to us what we want. So in situations where we're having to deal with change we didn't ask for, we need to use all 3 of those states. We need to be clear about what we want and go towards it with action, and magnetically work on drawing it to us, and we need to open ourselves up to notice what else is going on so that we go towards what's working and away from what's not working.
So can you be active Well, yeah, I'm going to ask the question anyway, but I'm going to frame it with commentary. Because I have friends. I mean, I've been in the, metaphysical, new age,
Hmm.
alternative
Yep.
thought movement, for centuries. And,
Yep.
I have a number of friends that really believe in the law of attraction. And they're
Hmm.
like, if I keep my emotions positive, then I'll get what I want, blah, 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 blah. And they do nothing. And then they
Correct. That
wonder why
doesn't
it's
work.
not working.
Yeah.
I mean, can you just create that receptive place without putting in the action?
So my belief about what you're talking about, the law of attraction, is actually magnetic. Magnetic is drawing towards you what you want. So there's like, I wanted this, I want this. Like, I'm working with a client right now, and she said, she's in her 60s, newly divorced. She's looking for a partner, and so she's putting out that she wants that, and she's using her energy like a magnet to draw that towards her. But if she only did that, if she sat in her house and did that, it's not going to just. That's not the only thing that's going to work, right? We know that.
Hmm.
You're sitting in your couch. A guy's not just going to materialize there, right? It's one of the states. So one of the things is I believe we can influence the outcome through our magnetic energy. But we also have to take dynamic action. So she has to get out, and she has to go to conferences, and go to workshops and stuff where she's meeting people, right? And then she also has to be receptive, meaning opening herself up to. I think I want a guy who's Australian, but like, what else might arrive? You need to receive what is being given. That's what receptive is, in my mind.
Online dating. I'm a big advocate of online dating personally. Anyway, what it works
So
good. Anyway,
yes,
moving
yeah.
along. Um, but I think that's really important for people to hear. But then there's kind of the opposite part, you know, about how we can actually sabotage ourselves from getting what we want. Could you speak on that just a smidge?
Well, talk to me a little bit about what you mean by that.
So you are saying that you want to create this new relationship. We'll use your
Hmm.
example.
Hmm.
And you're trying to have, that attractive thing, and you're going to conferences and doing these things, but then there's this other piece of you that's thinking, in the background going, but, if I could just lose 25 pounds, it
Hmm.
would be a lot better, or,
Yep.
and putting conditions on the whole thing.
Yeah. Or they have to be Australian or whatever. I mean, right. It works both ways, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So, so that to me is about what neuroscientists call mindsight, which is the ability of the mind to recognize what the mind is doing. The more we understand what our minds are doing, then the more we can relate to it. But if we don't even know what our minds are doing, if we don't even know that we're sabotaging ourselves, we don't even know that we're putting conditions on that don't need to be there, then we can't change it. But when we start to be able to observe our minds and say, "Oh, look at me, I'm putting conditions. Oh, look at me, I'm not trusted," whatever it is that your particular mind does, the more that we recognize it, then the more we have freedom and choice to change it. So mindsight to me is like the to me in a certain way is the key to happiness, because if we don't know what our minds are doing, then we can't be in charge of them. So different people call it different things. Some neuroscientists have started to call it mindsight. I've also heard it called the balcony. So you're not in the movie, you're watching the movie, or higher self, or the observer, the witness self. It's that part that goes, "Oh, look at me do that. I've done it 25 times and I'm about to do it again," like that.
Hmm.
And so that's that capacity to recognize. Has shown that 10 minutes of mindfulness meditation a day creates that capacity. Because mindfulness meditation is noticing, you put your mind on the breath, and then every time that you it goes somewhere else, and you notice and you bring it back, you're developing the capacity to notice. So the irony is everyone who works with me says, but I can't put my mind on one thing. I say, that's fine, because this is not about that. It's the practice of noticing that you went somewhere else and bringing it back. That's like lifting the weight of getting physically fit. That's the mindsight. Oh, I just was looking at the trees and thinking about my brother instead of like the breath. Mindsight. And the more we develop that, then the more in the moment we can say, oh, look, I've been hijacked. Oh, look, I'm sabotaging myself, whatever it is that we're doing. But if we don't know what we're doing, we can't possibly deal with it.
I mean, is change hard for everyone, or do some people fare better at it? And the ones that do fare better at it, why?
So we're getting into the topic of resilience. What helps certain people be emotionally resilient? And there's all kinds of research that says they used to think that some people were just more resilient than others. But it turns out that we can all develop it, and that there are 5 things that people do who are, quote unquote, naturally more resilient, that all of us, if we start to pay attention to what we're doing, can develop in our lives. So what are the 5 things? The first is to be able to be willing to learn from whatever this thing is. So it's like, I don't want the fact that my house burned down, but I'm willing to see what's going to come as a result of that, like learning, okay? Growing and learning, seeing it as a chance to learn, even though we don't know what it is we're supposed to be learning. The second is kind of a related thing, which is about like seeing it in a higher spiritual context. So whether you call it God or energy or spirit or whatever, it's like that there's a higher reason this is happening for us. The third is that trust in a positive outcome, even though we can't see what it is now. It'll turn out in some way okay. The fourth is humor. Find things to laugh about, not necessarily about the circumstance, but just in our lives. And this, as you know, that humor and all of the positive emotions have been shown to give us like a boost that helps us deal with whatever else is going on, because it counterbalances all the negativity. And then the last one is gratitude, which is a similar thing in terms of humor, in that all of the positive emotions serve to bring us back into balance, into equilibrium, to recover from the negative ones, to give ourselves less stress, more happiness, even for a second. So if you just think about, what am I thankful for? What am I grateful for right now? And to do that in the midst of difficulties can be really, really hard, as long as we say it doesn't mean that bad thing isn't happening. It means and in this moment, what else? I learned that from my dad when he was dying. He was in the hospital. He was dying of emphysema. And every single breath was a struggle. And I was sitting there next to him, and I couldn't, I don't know why, but I just popped up because he was struggling so much. I looked at him, I said, Dad, is your life still worth living? And he looked at me and he said, I like to watch the ball game on TV. I like to read the comics in the newspaper. Sometimes it's easier to take a breath. My life is good. That's the practice of gratitude. He wasn't saying he wasn't dying. He wasn't saying he wasn't dying. He wasn't pretending that this bad thing wasn't happening. He was saying, in this moment, what can I still enjoy? What can I still appreciate? And when he did that, he could be as content as he could possibly be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's practice of gratitude that helps us deal with the changes we didn't ask for.
Okay, so not using that example, but perhaps a different one, because this question totally won't fit. You were talking about having a positive attitude and having gratitude.
Yes.
After change, when people look back on the transition, in your experience, do they normally see it as being favorable? Like, I wouldn't change anything, or I learned all of this stuff from it? Or do they equally see it negatively?
So this is what made me actually start to research this. I mean, aside from people who've had unspeakable tragedies, like everyone in their family dying in a car crash or something, which I do know people in that, but putting that aside, but just the normal things of getting sick or, losing your job or divorce or any of those things. Once you get past a certain point, every single person that I've ever known has said to me, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because I learned X, Y, or Z. So willing to learn, willing to see it in a higher, place. So example is, so my sister called me one day a couple years ago, and she told me their house just burned down. They lost everything except the people and the pets. So of course the really terrible thing didn't happen. So yay. But then she spent months and months and months having to go through all of the insurance stuff and all of the rebuilding and blah, blah, blah. Now I never said, so part of this thing about noticing is what good comes out of it. You have to do yourself, and you can't do it too soon. If other people to say to you, well, what's the good that can come of this? It's like you don't want to hear it when you're in the middle of it, right? So I just kept quiet, and I just said, oh, you poor baby, until one day when I was talking to her, she said, you know what? I so much wanted to get rid of all that crap, and now it's all gone, and now I have a beautiful new house, right?
Mm-hmm.
So but in the middle of it, you can't necessarily see that. One of my clients once said to me, some gifts come wrapped in sandpaper.
I like that.
And
I like
I
that a
just
lot.
love that. I love that. So at the beginning, I think when all we can see and feel is the sandpaper, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, but down the line, at our own rhythm and in our own time, and only us, not someone else forcing us, can we say what was the gift underneath that sandpaper.
And I think there's always a gift, even if it's just a little teeny tiny gift.
I agree. And searching for that gift and trusting. I think that part of what helps as we get older, even just past very young, is that you start to see, I don't know what the gift is this one. I see that there was a gift from the other. So I have to trust that there'll be a gift here, even though I don't know what it is.
I had a question in my head, but it just went out the window. Oops. All right, let me think about this. Oh, I know what it was. So let's say you've had a lot of change in your life, and can you utilize those experiences and look back, even if it's just one or two, significant changes in your life, and look back and use that as a support to help you trust that you're going to make it through the next thing?
Absolutely. I think that's a super, super, super important point, Rita. So thank you for bringing it up. So I'll tell you a story that's illustrative. So I was talking to a group of women, and this woman raised her hand, and she was worried about her daughter. Her daughter was in her early 20s, and she couldn't find a job, I guess, when she graduated from college. It was like 2009 or something. So I said, okay. So I said, no matter how old you are, you have dealt with challenges before. I said, she said, oh no, but she's young. Nothing's ever happened to her before. I said, oh, so she didn't try out for the cheerleading squad and not get it. And she said, oh, she did try out for the cheerleading squad and not get it. I said, So how did she get through that? What did she do? So it isn't just trust that's built up from these things, but it's actually asking ourselves, how did I get through that other thing? So I helped her understand what her daughter did to get through that she didn't get in the cheerleading squad, which she could then use to how come I didn't get a job, to deal with the current challenge. So the fact of anything that's happened to us before that we've gone through and dealt with and came out on the other side is one way that we can go back to figure out the formula that we use so we can use that formula again.
They say, God never gives you any more than you can handle. Is there any truth to that? I mean, do some people get more than their share of, I'm going to say, character building experiences in their lives, where others maybe not so many? Or is it pretty evenly distributed around, but we just don't see it that way?
I really don't think that life is fair. I have heard people go through unbelievable, terrible thing after thing after thing, and other people seemingly have this. Well, it doesn't mean that everyone doesn't have challenges. They do, but I don't think it's fairly distributed. No, I don't. Um, why and what it has to do with, and some people talk about karma, and I don't. I have no idea why, but it certainly seems, from my view, that it's not necessarily fair, and the people who have it really harder have to figure that part out. I look at my sister's life versus my life, and I say I've had it much, much, much easier than her. Not that I
Well,
haven't had my own sorrows and challenges.
but see, that's good to hear and good to know. So then you can look at those people with evil eyes and go, "You lucky thing." No, just kidding, just kidding. Um, and I'm just looking at the clock so I stay on time. Um, so what happens to us if we resist the change, and we put our heels in the sand and say, "Well, I really don't want to do that."
Well, I think so it's the difference between pain and suffering, right? It's like pain is not, is what happens when we're hurt, and whether physically or emotionally, and suffering is the additive part we add on by resisting it, by not adapting to it, by refusing to acknowledge that we gotta relate to it differently. It's so we make. I mean, I know this. I mean, I've done it too. I'm not trying to say don't. I'm not perfect in any way, shape, or form. The reason I wrote all this stuff is because I originally did it when I was younger, all wrong. When I was 25 years old, I hurt my. Oh no, actually, I was 22 years old. I hurt my back, and I spent, before I was 30, I spent an entire year lying down in pain. And I did everything wrong. I believed it would never change. I thought my life was over. I told myself about terrible stories. I mean, I resisted the way that it was. I remember going to therapy, and one of the first things my therapist said is, "You have to accept that this is the way it is." And I was like, I can never accept it, and et cetera. I did everything wrong. And all of this stuff that I have learned is only later, and wished I could send it back to that young one, right?
Hmm.
But the more that we don't accept what's happening, then the more we add on whatever is the actual situation, we make worse and worse, right?
So is there an energetic piece to that as well?
Yeah, I think there's a resistance to what energetically is happening, right? And there's somehow, and that's what's weird about that part energetically, is it's not logical. Like, I remember this woman saying to me, "You have to accept that maybe it's never going to be different than this." And I was like, "How can I accept that? And how can I, like, be okay with this?" But somehow in the middle, I don't know, this is 30 years later. So I, and at some point I did accept it, and then it went away.
Hmm.
And I'm now 60 and
Oh.
have no pain at all.
Oh. Good example. Good example. Good, good, good.
Yeah. But you
Um,
can't force it. I don't even know how I got to this point. I tried everything. I did everything. I don't know. It's a mystical thing at a certain point, right? About how you just surrender to it.
but I mean, I think that's the operative thing, and I've never thought about it on a physical level. I mean, I have a number of clients that have issues, and I try to talk to them. It's like, you need to look at where you are today. They might have like chronic fatigue and
Hmm.
or fibromyalgia, and I'll say, you need to look at where I am today. I'm having a 3 day, so what can I do today? And accept that. Oh my God.
Yeah, I know.
they,
I know.
they they don't even want to
Yeah,
hear it.
I know. And there's something about both surrendering and yet not believing that's going to be forever. It's this weird dynamic between those two things, between saying, yeah, I'm accepting this is, and I'm not telling myself a story that is forever, that somehow, in my life anyway, is what the transformation was.
Mm-hmm.
But I spent from my 20s to my 40s before I stopped hurting. So I had
Wow.
25 years of chronic pain and working with myself about both acceptance and not telling myself scary, terrible stories. And somehow it all worked out amazingly.
All right, so we're getting very low on time. So let me ask you this question because this should take us up to the clock. Um, so we've just gone through a period of change and transition. What kinds of things do people experience on the other side?
Mm, you ask great questions. So there's wonderful research about resilience that shows that when we create more resilience in ourselves, the ability to deal with the things that come at us in a healthy way, then the other side, we are happier, more ability to deal with changes when they come again. So that's the resilience part. And this is the part I love the best. More able to help other people, more capacity to help other people going through things because we have this wealth of experience. So our suffering isn't worthless. It's like the fact that we went through this terrible stuff allows us to offer all of the gifts that we've developed to other people and therefore lessen their suffering. That to me is the best of all. But if you want to get practical, people who are more resilient, who've gone through this stuff and figured out, are more likely to get hired, are more likely to keep jobs when other people get laid off. So resilience is an amazing capacity that helps us not only deal with sort of the more spiritual, emotional parts of life, but even the practical ones.
Well, I like to say it's character building, and I think people that have gone through life challenges um, are more inclined to stick with it, and stick with something and not quit. And not necessarily because they're coming from a resistive point of view, but they're coming
Mm-hmm.
from, I don't know, they just do.
Well, grit. I call that grit
Okay,
because
good
they've
word.
done it before. Because so therefore you trust yourself that you can do it again, right? But there's always, at least for me, there's always a part. I'm going through stuff right now with my teenager. It's like I've done a lot. I've gone through lots of stuff about finances and my physical pain and divorce. I've had a whole lot of stuff that I didn't ask for, and now I have the teenage dramas that are, and I don't want to minimize. It's being very, very, very hard. But there's a part of me that goes, look, I went through this and this and this and this, so I can get through this. And what are all the resources that I've used before? How can I use them now? But there's a part of but there's still a moment in which you say, I can't do this. I just can't do it again. Look at my sister. I remember her calling me when the house burned. She goes, I can't go through one more hard thing. And yet she did. And now it's 3 years
Hmm.
later and she has a fabulous house. So that ability to go, we say we can't, but then we strap on our shoes and we start walking, right?
Hmm.
We walk towards the light. And that's the part you're talking about.
Go to the light, MJ. Go to the light. Although probably in the
Put
moment
on
as your
those.
house is burning down, you're probably wishing that there was a light. Um,
Why is this happening to me again? We have that, of course, it's a natural human thing. But then we put on those boots and we just keep on marching and then we get to the better place.
Put on those big girl pants. Hmm.
That's right.
uh, it's like I'm waiting. The clock on my computer is off, and so Joe, if you could send me a little message, Pooh, about how much time we have left. So I don't think we have very much. So I'm just going to throw this out, and if we could just kind of keep it short, what kind of things can we do to help us deal with these times? Better deal. Any quick tip, a first step for people? You talked about breathing. What other kind of things can we do?
Well, I think about maybe the first thing is focus on the solution, not the problem. So we can get really stuck in the problem. It's like, I don't like the fact that this is happening to me at work or whatever. Okay, yes, yes, yes. Don't like it, but what's the solution? So take your mind to, how am I going to deal with this? Not, I don't like it, or why me, or this isn't fair. All those things are true. And what are you going to do about it? So that's that part about focusing on the solution can be really helpful to not get so stuck in our feelings that we can't move on.
Okay, so I found out we have 5 minutes. So
Yeah. Okay.
Jim in the
Yeah.
chat
Okay.
room put, I need an unexpected disaster. It's like, we can set one to you, Jim. Come to my house. It is a disaster. But anyway, so what do you have coming up? I mean, do you teach classes? Do you work with people?
I work one-on-one.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I work one-on-one with people. I work with people going through all kinds of changes they didn't ask for. I work with people who want to do intentional changes. So if you go to my website, mj-ryan.com, you can find a way to click on to email me if you want support. So
do you work with people by phone, or does it have to be in person?
Yes, I'm also going to be at Omega, which is the center in New York, in August. You can go to omega.org, and if you're interested, I'm doing a weekend workshop on surviving change you didn't ask for. So if people who are listening thinking, oh, I might like to actually dig down and figure out how to deal with my feelings in the moment and how to recreate myself anew, that's what we're going to do in August. So you can look at omega.org and see if that might work for you. So thank you.
Yeah, it's in upstate New York, and that area is beautiful. So it's a great place to go and hang out.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So what's the change you didn't ask for that you're facing right now? Your house. No, I guess you maybe asked for that.
Oh, I totally asked for that but it's kind of like, actually, I mean, it's a huge house, the whole thing. I mean, I'm sitting in my new office that is disgusting, to be honest with you. I mean, this room has not been occupied in centuries. There's like dust on dust on dust on dust on dust, which is my project tomorrow to clean. And so there's just lots to do, but it's really weird. I think for some people, this kind of a change, they wouldn't even step through the door. And I'm just so excited about it. And I mean, I've been picking up plaster and washing dishes with a hose in my driveway because we have no running water in the kitchen. And but you know what? It's okay. I mean, that's the part that's so weird. I think for some people, they would just shut down. And to me, I'm like, it's okay. I don't even mind.
Yeah, and I also think that part of what works in those situations is keeping your eyes on the bigger picture, right? Like I remember I had a friend once who she waited 6 months for the right tile in her bath. She was remodeling her bathroom, and she had to go to the Y and take a shower every day because she only had one bathroom in her house. And I said to her, how can you possibly be doing this? She goes, I'm just keeping my eye on having the most beautiful, wonderful bathroom. So that's the focus on the positive outcome part, right? Which allows us to deal with whatever the stuff that's going on that we don't like is happening. You can say, okay, but I'm heading towards this. I'm heading toward a better relationship with my family, or I'm heading toward my sister's case. She got a brand new house, for free. Like that, because her other house burned down. So she got to remodel it inside exactly how she wanted it. So focusing on that helps you deal with whatever. So the positive outcome is you're going to have this beautiful house and you have a great office and all of that, right? And so washing.
But I don't want it to burn down. Bad.
No, washing the dishes in the driveway right now is not so big a deal in the face of the beautiful thing you're going to have.
This is going to be great. I've been keeping people up to date in the chat room and on Facebook, and they're like, yeah, now what? So. All right. Well, I think the music is supposed to come up. I have not heard from our engineer, although all right, wait a minute. 9:52, but I am way too retarded to figure out what time it really is. Oh, there he is. 2.5 minutes. I got half a minute to go. Okay, so MJ, why don't you give out your webpage again? And actually, the name of your book, and where they can get it and all that good stuff.
Well, you can get this online anywhere or most stores, How to Survive Change You Didn't Ask For. And if you go to mj-ryan.com, you can find it and other resources, and also see my capacity to work with you, and also to, if you're interested in the weekend workshop at Omega, there's a link there to go and connect up with that.
Well,
so
excellent.
I really want to thank you for this experience, and wish you all the best with your house, and know that you're going to come out on the other end and it'll be great, right?
I know it's going to be great. And MJ, thank you so much for coming on. You know, what you had to say and your examples made so much sense that I just really appreciate that. It's very grounded with lots of common sense. You know, not all foo-foo and fluffy that it's like, okay, well, what did that mean? So
I'm from New England. I'm very practical.
Okay. All right. Well, you have a great evening.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
That's MJ Ryan. Her book is How to Survive Change You Didn't Ask For. Her webpage is www.mjryan.com. And then next week, we have Cash Peters coming on and talking about, does your life matter? And Anyway, so till next week, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Just Energy Radio. Be blessed.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio.